Hello everybody. In this video, I will show you the flow of how the authentication process works in a front-end, back-end environment, pretty much the application that we're doing right now. So we have this little graph that shows you pretty much how is the process, how it is working. So in this case, the client is the web application, is the view application that we're building right now, and the server is the one that we're going to be building later. But we're going to rely in a third party in order to get the user authenticated. And that third party is going to be Google. In there, we're going to store two things. We will have the normal user email and password authentication, and we will use the Google authentication. But the flow is pretty much the same. How it actually works is from the client, we will select or the login button, we're going to click actually signing with Google. And this will go to the Google API server and will give us a pop-up with authorization dialog. That authorization dialog will tell us that your application needs to have access to your information. Remember, we are saving the information we are relying in Google to save the user information. That authorization, when you approve it, will send back an access token and ID token. Sometimes it's returned the one-time code, depending what is the case of authentication. In our case, we are actually returning the user object. And that user object, what it have is the username, it have the user email, it have the photo URL, and things like that. So we have like the full user information that is stored in Google. After we have that information, we're going to send that access token to the server. The server will verify if that access token actually is valid. Somehow with the Google API, Google say yes, it's valid, so the server will retrieve the information. This is actually how it works. So from the client to Google to get the access token, and then that access token is sent to the server, and the server needs to verify with Google that that access token is actually valid. This is one of the most secure ways to actually authenticate an application, because we are keeping the user store outside the scope. In this case, our servers that are going to be connected to our own database will not store any user password authentication method. The traditional way is removing all this section and have the username and password stored on the server. So when you send the user and password, the server will verify the login credentials, will generate a token and send the token back. And whenever we do a request to the server will just validate that token internally because it has its own code and send it back and respond with the resource. And when I'm saying respond with a resource, I'm talking about, like, for example, let list of posts or do an action, save an item, something that we need to actually do on the application and the database side. The one who is going to be communicating to the database is the server, and the one communicating to the server is the client. This is pretty much the flow. But there is issues in there. There is no bad to actually store username and password. Of course, when you store a password in a database, you need to encrypt those, and there are different methods for that. But talking about security, talking about real world examples, we pretty much rely in a third party to store that user information. In the example in this semester, we are going to be using Google, as I described before. But when you're working in a business or a company, you actually can rely in the local Active Directory for the company, for example, or you can rely, you're doing a product, but you can actually rely on Facebook authentication or any other way to authenticate a user to the application. It's a really common practice to have the authentication send it to a third party and validate through a third party. That way your credentials are not stored locally and you add a layer of security in your app. So what we're going to be building for the front-end part is going to be the steps 1 to 3. We're going to send information to the Google database we want to get the pop-up, and we need to accept the permission. And then with that, we will authenticate in the client side. The rest of the part is going to be done later through the project when we're going to build the server. As I said before, we are going just to use the client side right now. But not only the Google section, we're going to use Google also to do a local authentication. Local authentication means username and password. As a username, I'm going to use the email and password. I'm going to be stored in a Firebase Google database. So we are going to have another way to actually register the user to the database, and that's going to be in a similar way. Instead of doing a login action, we're going to do a register action, but the flow is the same. You're going to send the username and the password. With the register action, it's going to be registered, and it's going to return an access token and the user store. That's it. Of course, that user store can be modified accessing the profile and doing another type of jobs. So in the next video, I will show you how to connect the application to Google and have those authentication methods be working.